Hello, welcome to TruTech Valve. In this video we're going to illustrate how to convert an existing hand wheel valve to a modified chain wheel operator. We're also going to discuss some of the safety issues that could present themselves, and we're going to go through a complete demonstration along with torquing the bolts whenever it's complete, and also a follow-up torque within 24 hours of the final assembly. Thank you. The first thing we'd like to make sure that we do before we work on this valve is we want to make sure our system's de-energized, whether the valve be locked out and tagged out or we have the valve out of line. Regardless of whether we want to work on the valve out of line and we need to remove it, or we're going to remove the bonnet in line, we need to make sure that the necessary precautions have been taken to work safe, and make sure lockout and tagout procedures have been met and we're compliant to all safety programs at the plant. At this point in time, we're going to start working on the valve. Another thing that you want to have in consideration is it's a good idea to work with two people in case of lifting the valve or the bonnet off and then reinstalling the new body and diaphragm back onto the valve body. That if it's in an awkward position, it could be heavy. You could be reaching, and you want to work safe at all times. So let's go ahead and start taking the valve apart. We're working on a bench in a controlled environment, but when you're doing this for real, you'll be in a working environment, possibly in a power plant or in the inline and energized situation. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to begin disassembling the valve to remove the existing hand wheel operator and bonnet subassembly from the valve. For the 3-inch size D true flows, there is 4 bolts, 4 main body bonnet bolts that need to be removed. Now their example that they're working on now is they're doing it in a star pattern so that they maintain a consistent pressure holding the diaphragm and the bonnet in place. Obviously we're moving the valve around, which if you do it in a shop, you will have that ability to move the valve around. If you're doing it in line, you won't have that, but you should be able to pull everything out directly on the top. That completes the removal of the 4 bolts. As you see, the bonnet, diaphragm, valve, hand wheel, sub-assembly is laid off to the side. We will be reusing the valve body. Now we will need to remove the diaphragm from the hand wheel sub-assembly so that we can reuse the diaphragm. So at this point in time, they'll be removing the weather cap. This way we can remove the travel stop. On the hand wheel style valve, it has a travel stop installed. The travel stop needs to be removed so that the stem can be pulled from the hand wheel drive assembly. There are threads inside that cause the stem to rise and fall depending on whether you're going to open or close respectively. Upon completion of removing that travel stop, now they can begin using the hand wheel to extend the diaphragm compressor from inside the chamber of the bonnet. As you can see, it is being extended. As it is extended, it will eventually thread itself out of the stem bushing. care is being taken so not to drop it. As you can see, one guy is able to handle the 3-inch size D. If necessary, though, you can clamp the bonnet into a vise. Now once it's extended beyond the bonnet, he was able to unthread it by rotating the compressor diaphragm. Now at this point in time, the bonnet sub-assembly hand wheel can be set aside either to be restored or put on the shelf for future spares for some of the other valves. They're now going to remove the 2 compressor screws which attach the compressor, the green component, to the valve diaphragm. Okay, now the compressor and the valve shaft can be put back with the bonnet hand wheel sub-assembly if you so desire. We will not be needing those parts from this for the reassembly. We only need the diaphragm. The black diaphragm, which will be reused and attached to the chain wheel sub-assembly, the modified chain wheel sub-assembly and bonnet as we show now. Again, the chain wheel needs to be rotated, and you will need to drive the compressor out of the bonnet chamber by rotating it. As you can see, it's a lot easier this time with two people working it rather than one. Again, two will make it easier. You can put it in a vise, whichever the work environment permits. For 1 second, you could take a look at the shaft, the threaded shaft on the compressor of this one versus the hand wheel, which was much longer. So you can't; these are not interchangeable. You have to take them apart this way because you need the shorter shaft to go up inside the chain wheel so that it doesn't extend beyond the top of the chain wheel for the flush fit. Okay, now we're going to reassemble the diaphragm to the new compressor using the 2 stainless steel cap screws. The first step we want to do is add some blue Loctite to the stainless steel cap screw. Then we will line up the compressor to the diaphragm and attach the compressor using the 2 stainless steel cap screws, tightening the cap screws securely. Then the diaphragm assembly will be ready to reinstall into the bonnet assembly, the chain wheel bonnet assembly.
You have to get on the phones.
You're gonna cut after this or what? Or you cut now?
Now we will be installing the diaphragm compressor stem back into the chain wheel bonnet. Again, you can begin threading it as he did. Starting it, it'll rotate. Then once it hits the bonnet chamber, you'll have to turn the chain wheel hub in order to get the valve to be threaded back in. Because of the compressor is received into the bonnet, the underside of the bonnet chamber. Again, two guys sometimes will helps out a little bit.
Alright, there you go.
Okay, at this point the valve is ready to go back together. We're ready to install the bonnet chain wheel assembly, sub-assembly back to the valve body using the 4 cap screws that were removed from the valve body previously during the uninstallation stage of the hand wheel bonnet assembly.
No, just toss it on there. Toss it here. Take that side, I'll take this side.
They will line up the 4 bolts, get them started.
Bonnet's aft.
Now when reassembling the valve bonnet to body, during the tightening up process, you need to use a star pattern or a X pattern, tightening up and doing a 5-pound torque on each side and doing intervals, torque intervals during that process so that not to overload one corner versus the other.
Got it.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Did you see that?
You tighten it up, torque it to the desired specification that's in the torque chart, and upon completion of the torquing, the valve will be reassembled. Again, it's important to go back and re-torque the valve the next day within 24 hours due to the rubber relaxing and releasing its force, so that you can be sure that you eliminate any potential issues for leakage.
Tighten it down with a regular wrench.
Now, as you see, he's rotating the valve around to get to his X pattern. You won't have that liberty if the valve is still installed in line. However, you will be able to do that on a bench if that makes it faster for you. Okay, as you can hear, he's reached torque value. The valve is now tightened up and ready to go back into service. You need to make sure that you have cleared your lockouts and tagouts upon leaving, and make sure that all your tools and equipment are removed from the area and you leave a clean work site. Thank you and work safe.